We kicking this one off with Lil Powder from the Jordan Down Projects. He has one of the most active names out the set. Ain't no sugarcoating. We talking politics, his past, and how he really stood on business. I'm giving y'all real hood tales and real section war stories.
Stop playing, nigga.
Go young, nigga. Ain't no BC,
on Basie. Man, how you turn the camera around right here? Yeah. That's on Grape. Hey, listen, man. That's on Young. PC who? PRMOSB, Jordan Down, Grape Street, Lil Powder. You know what it is. I'm the dead homie. You're not arguing. A nigga is not arguing with no trolls. A nigga not finna go back and forth with no nigga, no bitch in this world. On Basie.
A homicide in progress. Watch closely. First, you see 3 vehicles drive by. Detectives say they've spotted them on other cameras, too, driving in tandem. All of them part of what happens next. Triple shooting. 3 people shot. It blew out the back window of Dugall's car and hit the power box of the gas station, knocking out the power. When the gunsmoke settled, Dugall was dead. His girlfriend and a homeless man critically wounded, and the shooter...
We're about to break down how him and 6 other Grape Street members allegedly slid on 3 different targets in just 3 hours, leaving 7 people hit and 1 left for dead. And we're gonna get into how most of his co-defendants folded, either took the stand or gave statements, turning their back on the same man they was riding with. Aight, let's get straight to it. We taking y'all back to August 3rd, 2016. That night, Lil Powder and a gang of Grape Street members linked up deep in the heart of Jordan Downs. Word is, they wasn't just chillin'. It's alleged they came together to plot some heavy retaliation, aimed directly at the bounty hunters. Streets was hot, tensions high, and that meetup, it might have been the start of something deadly. And allegedly, a few weeks before this plan, somebody from Grape Street Watts, who was a high-ranking member, would be murdered by a member of the bounty hunters. But they alleged that on the night of August 3rd of 2016, somebody named Vernon Williams, who was an alleged leader and shot caller for the Grape Street, was the one that came up with the plan and told everybody what to do, and everybody followed in Williams' direction. They would all then jump into 3 separate cars and stay in communication on their cell phones. Williams, who they alleged was the shot caller, would jump into a Mercedes with somebody named Bradford, and they would be the lead car. Their job would be to look for the targets. 3 other people would jump into the Lexus, which would be the decoy vehicle, and the last vehicle would be a Nissan, which would have Lil Powder and 2 other people in it. We're going to refer to them as the shooter vehicle, and the first place that they would drive to would be the Howard Hughes Center. This would be a shopping center, and like I said earlier, Williams, who was the shot caller and the one who constructed the plan, I think it's safe to say that he probably got the drop that there was a Damu out there driving a Maserati, because that's the type of vehicle that they would be looking for. Williams would then spot the Maserati, and he would identify the driver as somebody from bounty hunters. That's when the shooter vehicle that had Lil Powder in it would open fire on the Maserati, and all 3 people inside of the shooter vehicle would hit the driver of the Maserati. Thankfully, nobody would pass away in the situation, but the driver would have to be treated for multiple gunshot wounds. And shortly after the shooting happened, they would return back to Watts and pick up an AK-47. They would then pull up to the Nickerson Gardens and circle around a few times. They would then see a group standing in the field, and that's when Lil Powder would park the Nissan, and a Grape Street member with the last name Lawson would open fire on the group until his pistol was empty. And the other passenger, whose last name was Smith, had the AK and attempted to put one up top, but couldn't. So Smith wasn't able to fire any shots. Nobody would be hit in the shooting at this location. The next shooting would happen about an hour later after this. This would be the last shooting, and this one would happen at a gas station across the street from the Nickerson Gardens. The 3-car full of Grape Street members would drive by the gas station, and they would notice Cordero in his vehicle parked outside. That's when they would pull into the gas station. Smith, who was in the backseat of the Nissan, would roll down the window, and they would exchange words. Smith would then open fire with the AK. He would kill Cordero and would wound 2 others, including his girlfriend. And this shooting would take place at 12:50 a.m. at the 76th gas station across the street from Nickerson Gardens. This right here is Dougal Cordero, who lost his life the night of the shooting. We want to say condolences go out to him and his family. May he rest in peace, but let's not forget that this whole thing was caught on camera. So less than 2 hours after the shooting and the murder, The Lexus, who was the decoy car, would be pulled over and the occupants would be arrested. This would happen around 3 a.m. the morning on August 4th, but later on that night of August 4th of 2016, the occupants of the Nissan would be pulled over and they would also be arrested as well. And this would be the car full of shooters. This would be the car with Lil Powder and 2 other people, and they would all be booked and arrested that same exact day of August 4th of 2016. But this right here is where things get tricky, because Smith, who was the one with the AK and was the one who pulled the trigger when somebody lost their life that night, would give statements to police and cooperate. As soon as he stepped foot into the police station, he would admit to detectives that he was part of the group from Grape Street that committed the shootings at the Nickerson Gardens, at the gas station, and at the shopping center. But this is where things get crazy, because Smith, who was the shooter, also told police that the gang forced him to participate in the shootings. He would tell police that they physically assaulted him and held him at gunpoint and told him to jump into the Nissan. He would also say that they forced them to hold the AK in the back seat. But during his interrogation, he would give a bunch of inconsistent statements about where he was seated in the vehicle. He would also tell police that Lee, and don't forget that situation right there, Lil Powder was just the driver, and Smith and Lawson were both the shooters, and he would blame Lawson for the murder at the gas station, saying he was the one that fired the AK-47 out the back seat. And with the evidence they gathered, including the statements of Smith putting everybody on the scene, they would be charged with 1 count of murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of shooting at a vehicle, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. But Smith wasn't the only one who gave a statement, because the second shooter, who was Lawson, would also give a statement in exchange for a plea agreement. And the next person who would give a statement in exchange for a plea agreement would be Bradford. But before we dive into that, I just feel like I need to mention that Vernon Williams, who we spoke about earlier, was not charged in this case at all, and he would be the one that was riding in the Mercedes with Bradford, and he was also the one that they claim was the shot caller and telling them what to do. So I don't even get how he didn't get arrested, because Bradford, who was in the vehicle with him, was arrested. And like we just read in the paperwork, they know he was present for everything, because there would be 3 people giving statements. They would all have to sit in the county jail for the next 4 years.
Crazy how these get the snitching. Me and Brody's, we done went up on a mission. Flocka went to detective, the shooter and turned witness. Boy, listen, it's crazy how these get the snitching. Me and Brody's, we done went up on a mission. Flocka went detective, the shooter and turned witness. These niggas, how the my right-hand man turn into a witness. This crazy on my motherfucking baby. 30 minutes at the station, he already made a statement. Damn. This shit amazing. This interview 100 pages. Mad at me because this ass couldn't hang out. Went and told them lies and got a young banged out gang. That's what it's about though. How you holler gang, but then you going on your mouth. This shit is wicked. I don't even fucking get it. How the driver stay solid, but the shooter did the snitching. It's thugging. I can't even lie on. Baby, look, I did some busting. Now I'm sitting here, locked up with cancer, trying to use the phone, but don't nobody want to answer. Boy, listen.
He would then start trial in January of 2020. And during the trial, Lawson and Bradford would testify against Lil Powder and Smith, who was also one of the shooters. But don't forget that Lil Powder was just the driver. And on top of that, they would also have statements from Smith that he made at the police station. And they would also have surveillance footage of the whole entire thing. But after about a month, on February 6th of 2020, he would be convicted by a jury and found guilty on all counts. For count 1, he would get life without parole. Count 2, he would get life, but as you can see at the bottom, he would have to run that consecutive. Count 3 would be the same thing, life. And as you can see at the bottom, he would have to run that consecutive also. On count 4, he would get 15 years to life. Count 5, he would get life again. And as you can see at the bottom, he would have to run that consecutive also. And count 6, he would get 15 years to life. And as you can see at the bottom, he would have to run that consecutive also. And this right here would be how he got 7 life sentences, because as you can see, count 1 is life without parole, plus an additional 25 to life. So that would be 2 life sentences just for count 1. Count 2 life, count 3 life, count 4 life, count 5 life, count 6 life. And in red, all counts are to run consecutive. And it's crazy because he was just the driver, and the shooters are the ones that told on him. Lawson, who was 18 years old at that time, would receive 28 years in prison and be eligible for parole, and 13 for his statement. And Bradford, who was 19 years old at that time, would get 9 years in prison in exchange for his statement. And on February 5th of 2020, which was a day before Lil Powder was convicted, Smith, who was the shooter and the one who gave the statements, would be found guilty by a jury, and he would be convicted, but he would be acquitted on 2 counts. And on count 1, which would be the murder, he would get life without parole. Count 2, he would get life. And as you see at the bottom, count 2 has to run consecutive with count 1. And on count 3, he would get life again. And as you can see at the bottom, he would have to run that consecutive. Also, on count 4, he would get 15 years to life. And then the last count, he would get 3 years. That right there would be the story of Lil Powder from Grape Street. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. But comment, like, and subscribe. It's the who's who.